Good afternoon. This is Bradley Smith with Vigilix. I greatly appreciate you joining us today. Andy Kurtz will lead us in an informative session entitled How to Turn Your Application Support Team into a Profit Center. Before we begin today's content, I'd like to cover a couple of logistical issues. Because we do have a large number of attendees in the webinar today, I've muted all the phone lines to reduce residual noise. For your privacy, we have blocked the names of all other attendees in the participants box. If you experience any technical issues, please notify me, the web producer, via the chat box on the right side of the screen. Please do not use the chat box for general questions for the presenter. Questions should be entered through the Q&A box right below the chat box on the right-hand section of your screen. There will be a Q&A session at the conclusion of the presentation, but please feel free to submit your questions anytime during the actual presentation. Also, we will be recording today's webinar, and that recording will be posted and a link will be sent out to it as soon as we do have it available for everyone. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Andrew Kurtz, President and CEO of Vigilix, to start today's presentation.
Hey, thanks, Bradley. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Appreciate you joining us today, taking time out of your day. Hopefully you'll find this to be informative. We're covering a topic that's along the lines of something that we talked about earlier, but kind of hits the other side of the equation. Today we're going to talk about turning your POS Support Center into a profit center, and we're going to really focus on the revenue side of that equation. So, you know, obviously everyone here is involved in business. We all understand that the equation for profit's pretty simple, right? It's revenue minus cost is equal to profit. And today, like I said, we're going to focus on that revenue side. Last month, or 2 months ago, I apologize, we did a presentation that was focused more on the cost and the operational side of things. And if you joined us for that one, we talked about ways to increase your POS support capacity without adding more staff, and the focus was once again on operational efficiency, things you can do to get more out of the team that you have, to reduce the number of calls and so forth, everything on the cost side of that equation. And if you missed that webinar, you know, we encourage you to let us know. We can provide a link to that webinar, so if you want to go back and look at that one, we do have that one recorded and posted, and would be glad to share that with you as well. So, why is Vigilix even qualified to have this conversation with you, to present this topic? Well, a couple of really important things to know about us. You know, we've been focused on the space, and specifically on this point of sale space, for more than a decade. We've been working really closely with our customers, with people like you, to build our product from the ground up, to support their operations, to make them more efficient, to give them tools that they need to both operate more effectively and have solutions and value-added solutions that they can sell, to give them the ability to build new service offerings. We have, for that 10 years, focused exclusively on the channel. Our focus has been 100% on not selling directly to end users, but on working with the folks who are delivering solutions and support to the end users, to put those tools in their hands so that they can provide a better solution. So we've worked with a lot of different companies, and we've seen things that have been done very successfully. We've gone through numerous iterations with folks, and we want people to look at us as an extension of their team, as a partner in trying to help address these issues. So I encourage all of you, you know, after you hear what we talk about today, if you'd like to have further conversation, reach out. We'd be happy to share thoughts and experiences and best practices that we've seen and learned through the years, and help you implement these types of solutions. All right, so what are we going to actually talk about today? We're kind of going to go through a series of steps to look at different ways that you can add revenue to the equation by using your support infrastructure. So we're going to talk about the benefits of support as a profit center first, because why do this if there aren't any benefits? Then we're going to look at different paths that you have, and a stair-step approach to implementing these types of solutions. And then we're going to also take some time and just look at what kind of impact could this actually have. We have an ROI calculator that we're going to take a peek at a couple of scenarios, kind of look at the impact and the revenue impact of implementing some of these concepts. And hopefully that'll give you an opportunity. We're going to be using some hypothetical numbers, but hopefully you fall close to one of the sets of numbers we're going to use, or somewhere in a range where you can look at it and get a quick read on, okay, what does this actually represent for my organization? But I encourage you to also remember it's not just about the revenue side. Some of the things we're going to talk about today and the tools we're going to talk about today can also have additional impact on that cost side. So, what are the benefits of looking at support as a profit center and implementing some of these concepts? Well, this is based on one key premise, and that's you can't just survive by doing nothing but selling a product. It can't be 100% about that individual sales transaction. That's being turned into more of a commoditization. And if that's all that's being offered, it adds additional risk of turning and accelerating that commoditization. So we look at support and different techniques around support as a defense mechanism against that. It offers an opportunity to deliver additional value to customers and to improve the way that you deliver that value. And in doing so, there should be an extra cost. But a lot of people are sometimes afraid of charging extra for that support side of it, and we've heard that frequently. But we've also seen people very successfully implement solutions around improved support and additional value around support at an additional cost. And just as a general rule, we encourage you to remember that people don't value what they don't pay for. So let me say it again, people don't value what they don't pay for. So if you're delivering solutions but there's no cost to that, additional cost to that, they don't perceive that there's an additional value. So we encourage you not to be afraid to charge extra for these support offerings and for these additional value add options. And there are just many different ways you can look at it, and we're going to look at several of those. Another very important thing is simply the stickiness that delivering improved support can provide, and some of these mechanisms can provide. It makes the relationship seem more important. It creates more frequent contact with the customer, whether that's a person-to-person contact or some automated contact. And there's also additional value of some other solutions that can be provided that make it so that the customer perceives this as more than just that individual transaction, but a relationship that has value in continuing that relationship and a longevity to that relationship. And finally, several of these opportunities represent an option to start growing that recurring revenue from service contracts and from other tools that you can sell. And building that predictable base of recurring revenue is one of those business tactics that a lot of organizations are looking at as a way to defend against the ups and downs of just market swings. And this is these tools and these mechanisms we're going to talk about today, we think are a very powerful way to start to build in that type of recurring revenue. So, as we're looking at these things, we're going to actually look at these in kind of an escalation of what we see as the potential value to the customer. We're going to start out by just looking at the concept of third-party services that you can add to your support offerings, effectively reselling a third-party services through your support offering. And we look at that as it's more of the traditional model. And then we're going to look at two things that we think are a little bit more out of the box. One of them is to resell the support tools you already use, to find ways to package the tools you've already paid for and are already using in ways that your customers can use, and to help recover those sunk costs and generate revenue from those costs that have already been incurred. And then finally, building a series of premium support packages. And we're going to look at several different ideas around support packages, and once again, those will escalate, all of which create new value around just the traditional break, fix, call support model. So looking at the first one, what we talked about, offering third-party support services. The example we're going to use is offsite backup. I think it's a really easy one to kind of grasp and get your head around. There are offerings for offsite backup, and the idea here is that you're not having to make a huge investment in building an offsite backup infrastructure. You're able to resell an existing infrastructure to your customers. And you're simply reselling that particular service. There's really no additional value add that you even need to add to it other than getting the backup installed, configured, and backing up the right things. I mean, offsite backup is such a critical thing, and customers are looking at it, so these types of services are logical things to be looking at adding into the support offerings to customers. There might be some education to the end user about why offsite backup's valuable, but honestly, I think most people have now reached a level of understanding of why backup is critical, of the impact of not having a good way to back up, and maybe the education that needs to take place is not that backup's important, but hey, if there's a disaster inside of a location, inside of a store or a restaurant, the ability to get that data off-site and still have access to it. Maybe there's some education around that, but it really is minor heavy lifting. So this model is actually a real simple model that we're all familiar with, right? There's a cost to it, and you have a value, a price that you can put on it that needs to match what market pricing is, and effectively you're going to net a per unit cost. Just that very simple model we're all very used to. But it does represent, in terms of something like offsite backup, and perhaps things like reselling malware support or AV support, those types of things offer opportunities for recurring revenue, whether you're charging that a recurring revenue annually, quarterly, or monthly, whatever your system support, your support model allows, and it still offers a recurring revenue model and a level of stickiness that brings value. And so looking at just the profit opportunity, you know, looking at this one slide, this is a per site cost or per site analysis. This is not something, no one would jump up and down at netting $3.80. But you know, when you start adding it up, $3.80 per site per month net, and you start doing that across thousands of systems, it starts to add up to some serious dollars from simply reselling that offering. And at the same time, with something like offsite backup, actually making, if there is a disaster, your ability to deliver support and recovery a faster and less expensive model as well. So that's kind of more traditional concept. And there are several tools you can use. But I want to challenge everyone to kind of think of something that maybe is a little bit different than something you've thought of before. And that's reselling the support tools you use. So the best example that we can think of is remote access. Almost every customer that we work with, they have some method of remote access into their customer systems to deliver support without having to get in the car and drive somewhere. We are all used to that today. The companies that we work with, our customers, they've sunk the cost into that. They need that tool to be available in order for them to deliver support to a customer. So that cost has already existed. So our challenge to folks is figure out a way to bundle access to that same support tool and sell it back to your customers, and whatever pricing model you can put on that, because you've already got sunk costs, as long as the remote control tool that you're using doesn't have additional cost associated with it if you allow the customer access, as long as it doesn't require that, that represents 100% profit. There is no additional cost. Whatever you can charge, you can get. So this is a situation you can kind of set your own pricing level. You can decide to look at different market solutions and price it at that point. You can bring down the price a little bit more. And by the way, when I say charging for this, whether that's for this type of product or whether that's even for the backup, we've seen customers maybe not line item it, but roll it into their support contract and say, hey, our support contract includes these things, and they've increased the price of their support contract to cover this and generate the revenue off of it. But it's not necessarily that you have to sell a line item. I want to emphasize that. You know, there are ways to bundle it in and say, hey, you know what, our support contract just includes these value-added features for you. So as I mentioned, 100% of it adds revenue to your bottom line. It's all goes to the bottom line as long as there's no additional cost. And of course, it creates an additional value to your end user. So a couple of things to think about in terms of this, and once again, this all depends on the solution itself, but when you think about it, both the end user and your team need access to the systems, but it really is for different purposes. You need it to support the customer. The customer needs it to run business, to look at reports, to change information, to maybe update pricing, or look at, as I mentioned, different reports and different ratios and daily sales type information. So you're both accessing it for different reasons. But if you have the right tool, you can now offer a solution that you can not only point your customer to and they can use, but in our case, we've built a solution that's called the Client Access Portal that you can either point them directly to a white labeled or basically a white labeled site where they don't know Vigilix is in the equation, or as we've had some customers do, you can embed this in your own website. So the customer comes to your website and they launch remote access and they never even go. They don't realize they're going to anything that is related to our company. They just think they went to your company and you're providing this solution. So a great opportunity to deliver something that helps drive customers to your site with your branding on a regular basis that you've already paid for. So those are two of the ideas. The traditional reselling third-party support services, and then finding ways to bundle existing products that you're already paid for in ways that your customers can use. So the third thing is to look at building premium service packages around different tools. And specifically, we recommend around monitoring type solutions, monitoring and remote monitoring and automation solutions. And you can, by the way, I want to emphasize a couple things here. We're going to look at several different packages. We're not recommending that you implement every package. In fact, I'm a big believer that less can be more. I'm also a big believer in the concept of crawling and then walking and then running. So we think what we've put in place here and what we've seen successfully done is a series of packages that can grow in scope and can grow in value, can be implemented easily without any major investment. Certainly no major infrastructure investment is necessary. There's certainly, you obviously have to look at building it into your business model and implementing these solutions. So there's that investment is the key thing. How will we take these concepts, looking at our business model, and figure out how we embed this into our sales and marketing messaging as well as our support operations? How do we do these things is where the main effort needs to take place on your part. The infrastructure for delivering these types of things exists. But when we're looking at these, just keep in mind, you can start small, and we've seen people who say, you know what, we just have one package of support. You have two options from us, no support or the best support you're going to find. And that best support you're going to find includes mixes of the different packages we're going to look at, including things like remote access, including things like backup. So we've seen people very successfully have that all-inclusive, just one great support package. We've seen them do that very successfully. So that's an option as well. So we've seen several different ones, but I will tell you that I do believe that offering kind of a limited choice where there's not an overwhelming selection and too much cherry picking is definitely recommended. The last thing I want to point out is before we look at these packages is the names we're using here are just examples. You know, these are based on some things that our marketing team has looked at and said, you know, these are very relevant example names. Feel free to use them, but you know, you can come up with your own branding that matches your offering and your current support offering names and branding. So you'll notice on this level 1, it's going to be, the example of this would be whatever your company's name is, first alert. And the idea here is real simple. Put monitoring in place and send really important alerts to your customers with instructions on how to fix it. So here's a premium support. Hey, customer, we're going to be watching for things. This is a premium package. We're watching for things, and we're generating information to you to let you know proactively about things that we found and we saw, and we're going to tell you how to fix it. And if you need help, call us. We're here, but we're trying to put information in your hands proactively. So When that email comes, it definitely creates the perception of, wow, these guys are proactive. This is a proactive solution. But the irony, and this is something we touched on in the previous webinar that we did, it helps reduce support calls. You'll be surprised at how often the customer gets that information, and they know what to do when they see it and they see the instructions. So if there's something where credit cards didn't batch, hey, we noticed credit cards for this date didn't batch. To go fix it, go to do steps A, B, and C. And the customer can take care of that instead of it becoming a big problem in the future. So looking at the profit opportunity, if you charge something like anywhere from $2 to $10 per device, this price can range. This is something you're creating. It has to be what your value is. Cost, from $1 to $5 per device. You can net somewhere in the range of $1 to $5 per device you're monitoring per month. Whether you're monitoring just one back office machine or whether you're monitoring all devices is totally dependent on your business model, on the value add of monitoring at those different systems. So really that depends on your situation and needs to be looked at and analyzed. So the second one, and this kind of builds on the previous one, it would include all of the first alert functionality. And we're gonna monitor for things. And when something happens, we're going to email the customer. But hey, there's certain ones that we're going to instantly fix. Hence the name, whatever your company name is, InstaFix. We detected that a service that should be running is hung. We're going to have an automated process that's going to try to fix that automatically. So not only are we not even going to email a customer to tell them how to fix it, we're going to fix these things automatically, email them on certain other things, and have additional value add. It will really significantly increase the resolution of those items because it will be done as soon as it's discovered. It will be automatically fixed. And in those situations, it eliminates the need for the customer to jump in and for the support team to jump in. But once again, we think a very important message is to the customer is if you do, if you get a first alert and let's say an automatic fix doesn't fix it, the support team's still here to help you. That's what we're here for. So good examples of this might be restarting a service. I mentioned that, and that can get very complex. We've got some customers we've worked with that we've had to go through and write some very customized monitors around their point of sale solution to look for certain situations and a combination of situations to determine we have a problem, and then run through a more series or a complicated series of actions. And so I said it before, I want you to look at us as an extension of your team. We can work with you on analyzing and figuring out how to monitor, how to build it into the solution, how to build the automated fixes in a way that add maximum value. Other good example that we've seen implemented has been something as simple as cleaning disk space. Something that, hey, disk space is low, let's have something that automatically goes through and tries to clean out temporary file directories, maybe certain log file directories. So here's a nice and simple batch file to run that will clean out the stuff, and let's see if that clears up disk space automatically, and if not, we'll get a support team or generate an email to a customer automatically. Building on that, the on-call, and the idea here is real simple. Some things go to the customer, some things get fixed automatically, but some things get an automatic call generated or support ticket generated to the support team. These are still specific issues. When you look at this whole thing, you may only have 10 or 15 things that will generate any tickets or any emails to customers. But in this case, you're saying, listen, you don't even have to call us. When one of these things happens, let us know, and we will get our support team on this as quickly as possible. One of the things we always get the question of is, boy, is this going to flood the help desk with support tickets? And our experience has been, no, it does not. If you've done properly, the items that are being monitored are key things that you really want to jump on and are most likely going to generate support calls in the future if they're left ignored anyway. And instead, and this is also something we touched on in the previous webinar, instead, if you get this information from an automated system instead of the customer, you have more information about exactly what's going on, about exactly what's happened, and in a lot of cases, you're solving the problem before there's ever, the customer knows there's been a problem, but also before it's become a major issue. So an example of that might be, hey, business date didn't increment for a site. So if they come in and no one realizes it and we get a phone call, halfway through the day that it didn't increment. We've got sales transactions rung up on the wrong day, and now we have a bigger problem to fix, as opposed to, boy, we came in at 8 in the morning, we knew that this site business date hadn't incremented, and we had it fixed before the customer even showed up. And finally, this is kind of the granddaddy concept of them all, but it's a complete care. And the idea here is to try to bundle a more comprehensive service solution around your customer's entire system, saying we can take care of everything. In this case, our recommendation, or one of the branding options, would be something like, whatever your company name is, Complete Care. This would include basically you acting as that trusted advisor to your customer, where you're delivering not necessarily managed services on their entire IT infrastructure and every system that they have, but if you look at the retail or the hospitality environment, saying we're going to manage that environment for you. We're going to make sure that updates are taking place. We might handle digital media and firewall maintenance. We might handle automatic patching and so forth. So things like that, you're taking on a much larger role and within the organization, but there's a significant value to that, and really kind of the holy grail. This is one that definitely. This one requires a larger infrastructure investment and is not something to just say, hey, we're going to go do that tomorrow, as opposed to, once looking back at what I mentioned earlier, that crawl, walk, run to get to this point where you're comfortable delivering these types of solutions. So kind of reviewing those ideas that we had, hopefully we challenged you a little bit on some ideas that maybe you hadn't thought of, but reselling solutions that augment the support team's efforts, recovering those costs you've already spent on the tools that you already use, and then building premium support packages in a potentially growing escalation of the way you can deliver services. As I mentioned, I want to jump in real quickly and kind of look at a calculator that we've put together to try to help look at what is the potential ROI. And I don't want, as we're looking at this, I don't want anyone to get totally hung up on specific numbers. That, I don't want you saying, well, that doesn't match my organization. Well, we can work with you. We can provide you this calculator. We'll be happy to do that. You can, at the end of the presentation, we'll have information about if you'd like to send us an email or get some more information, tell you how you can get a copy of the calculator, and we'd love to sit down with you and work through it with you, kind of show you how this can work. So look at the numbers. These are designed to be representative of some average software providers. We're going to actually look at 3 different sizes of software providers. And we're going to look at somebody who's got 1,000 customers. We're going to look at somebody who's got maybe 2,500 end user sites, and we're going to look at somebody who's on the larger scale, maybe has 10,000 end user customers. And I know there are a lot of you out there who are larger than that, but this is all designed to give you some idea of the order of magnitude. Trying to be a little bit conservative in looking at this particular model. And let me just explain how this works real briefly. So there's some really key information up here. The first one is, what does the typical site look like? You're going to have outliers. You're going to have the huge site. You're going to have the tiny site. But what does the average site look like? And that includes both how many back office servers and how many additional devices, whether it's terminals, handhelds, kitchen displays, whatever they are. How many additional devices are there? Now, we have definitely seen where there is primary value on monitoring the back office server. The majority of things that generate support calls that can be resolved remotely and automatically, we've found that the majority of those are definitely on the back office server. That's not to say there's additional value. There's not additional value from monitoring and delivering services on those additional devices. But you'll notice if we look down here under the premium support options, in our model, we've definitely, first of all, our cost model, as well as our suggested retail price, $8 for the primary, that back office, and if you do have any secondary, only $2 a month for monitoring those types of things. So we're looking at one with 1 back office server and just 2 additional devices that we're going to monitor on average in a given site. And you'll notice in this calculator, you can even play with, you know what, I don't even want to include additional devices. If you change this particular area to no, then it's going to ignore those additional devices in terms of any revenue generation completely. So, looking at the 3 areas of the traditional model, offsite backup. These two items right here are related to offsite backup. And this is a little bit unique to the model of offsite backup that Vigilix offers. So let me explain real quick. I don't want to dive into too much depth on it, but here's the basic concept. We think when you sell backup to your customers, number one, your customer wants to know how much that's going to cost them. And number two, you want to know, worst case, what's your cost going to be. The worst case cost for you needs to be less than you're able to charge your customer. Pretty simple premise. So we have a model that is unlimited backup of point-of-sale data. And we have a suggested retail price of that of $8. Now, you can charge more. We don't publish that price. End users won't find that from us. So if you can charge more, that would be awesome. If you're adding additional value on top of just the offsite backup and can justify and get more from your customer, that's great. But just for this model, we're saying $8. That's for unlimited. We also have a model, an offering that says we can back up for a lower cost. We can back up to 4 gigs of data. And it includes an automated switch that when it hits that 4 gig minimum, it's going to upgrade itself to the unlimited package. This is 100% built. This whole model was built to maximize your profitability. The idea is real simple. Tell your customers, I'm selling you unlimited. I will back up your point of sale data no matter how big it is. It's unlimited storage. Charge $8 for it. But for every customer, select initially the 4 gig cap because that lowers your cost. And then as soon as a site needs more, it will upgrade itself. You'll make margin on the unlimited one, but you're going to make even more margin. And you can see here a cost of $4.20 versus $8 for the suggested retail price. You're making almost 100% margin on that particular offering. So looking back up at these backup options, the questions are, what percentage of your customers do you think you can sell backup to? In this case, we're saying 50%. This is a model where we're saying, hey, we're not bundling this into the no support or great support concept. We are selling this as a line item to individual customers. So 50% of our customers will buy backup from us, and of those, only 33% of those sites are going to need more than 4 gigs. And that number we've found is a pretty accurate representation of what we've seen in the field. Varies on point of sale product, but we think the majority of sites, individual sites, can back up in less than 4 gigs of total storage for their point of sale data. So that's how the backup works. On remote control, what percentage of customers can you sell remote access to? And once again, in this particular case, 50%. We're not assuming that we're bundling it into the no support or great support. If it's already built into the price of that contract, we'll look at that as a separate option later. And then there's a question of, hey, is there an additional cost to this remote control? You know, like if in the case of our product, if you're already using it, no, there's no additional cost. You're using it for support. There's no cost of giving your customers access to it. And then finally, what percentage of our end user locations do we think we can sell one of those premium packages to? And right now we're only assuming you've picked one premium package. So we didn't say, hey, there's 4 different options and play with that. Picking one, there's a price to it. In this case, $8 primary, $2 secondary. And do we even want to include those additional devices? So let's look at this. If we have a site with 1,000 end users that we're supporting, of which 50% are going to buy backup, and we're going to be able to 33% are over 4 gigs. Half of them will get remote access from us. There is an additional cost. In fact, if we change that, using our product, there is not an additional cost. And 50% are going to get monitoring, and we think we can get the additional devices included in that. And you'll see from the backup alone, yearly profit of $20,000. From selling remote access, in this scenario, as high as $48,000, and another almost close to $50,000 for premium support options, coming out to a total of $118,000 plus of added profit to the bottom line. This is not in this case, you're not actually doing any additional work. You're delivering additional services to these guys. If we say we're not going to include additional support options, we're literally just going to charge for the back office server, we're still over $100,000 in annual profit. And one important thing I want to point out, the offsite backup never takes into account additional devices. It's always assuming we're only backing up data on the back office server in this particular ROI model. So if that's looking at the idea of, hey, we're going to sell this, but we're going to get 50% adoption across our customer base of these support offerings. But let's say you take the no support or great support option. You build one support option that includes these built into it. These as value adds built into it. It's part of how you sell the support contract. And I'm not a believer that in any model you should use 0% or 100%. So I'm going to go with 95%. That, hey, you know, about 95% of our support contracts that we sell are going to include this particular functionality. We're going to have to make some exceptions. You'll see that the numbers get dramatically larger. We're up to close to $200,000 of added bottom line profit as a result of these offerings being embedded in the existing cost of a support contract. So that's how the model works. I just want to briefly look at a couple of different size organizations. This was a point-of-sale provider who maybe has 1,000 end users that are on support that these service offerings might be relevant to. If we go back to 50%, so taking the, hey, we're going to sell this ad hoc, but we go to a 2,500 end user location, you see we're adding close to $275,000, $272,000 added to the bottom line. And if we go with the great support, no support concept, it's $500,000 added to that bottom line. And finally, if we say a larger organization, 10,000 customers who this might be applicable to, you know, we're adding, in this case, we're adding $1 million to the bottom line. And if you go to that great support, no support option, you're getting over $2 million added to the bottom line. So the numbers can get very significant. You know, it all depends on the value of the pricing, what adoption rate you can get. Obviously, the calculator's built, and we would be glad to share it with you. If you would like to play with it, plug in your own numbers. And once again, I mentioned it earlier, we'd love to work with you and look at how this would actually impact your business if you could implement these types of techniques. So, kind of in summary, what steps can you take today to kind of get rolling on things like this? Well, the good news is there are ways to do this without a major investment. You know, Vigilix is offered through a cloud-based offering, so we've been designed to our offerings in this area are designed to make it so you can get started without any major investment. You can start out with some real simple monitoring, and we'll even work with you to get up to 25 sites rolling for free if you want to try out the monitoring and start putting some of this information into your customers' hands and seeing the value and the impact. If you're not already selling remote access using whatever tool you use and your tool supports it, maybe you should start looking at talking to your customers about if they want remote access, what are they currently using, if you could offer them something, you know, and look at what the revenue model would be for that. If you're using our POS Connect product, we have a solution called the Client Access Portal. I mentioned it earlier, that is just part of the product that you can use to offer to give your customers access to that without them needing access to the whole Vigilix interface, and there's zero additional cost. And then talk to your customers about backup. How are they backing up their data? Start to see, are they interested? Take a look at what the options are and what that could be. And then based on that information and maybe some of this, a trial with customers to see what their thoughts were on some of the monitoring, start to look at what some of those premium offerings would be like. Do you want to go with here's a base model, and then here's kind of a platinum model that we have, and it includes remote access, it includes backup, and start to beta test some of those. And then obviously, you know, once you find the right formula that works for your customers, seems to have the most value add, seems to get the largest adoption, then as new customers come up for new support contracts, migrate those legacy customers over. So I want to reiterate, we would love to talk to you about these concepts if you want to dive into them in more depth, if you want to work with the calculator. If you're interested in signing up for any of our products, you know, you can go to www.vigilix.com/tryme and fill out the form, and we'll be in contact. You can also just email bradley.smith@vigilix.com, get you a copy of the ROI calculator, or if you have any other questions, want to understand any of these concepts, feel free to reach out to Bradley. And with that, I want to say thank you guys for attending. And Bradley, I guess, do we have any questions?
We do have some questions, and I'll run through those really quickly. One that we came is related to the client access portal, and the question is, are there any limitations to the remote access capabilities with customers using the client access portal?
Well, I'm not quite sure how to define limitations, but the POS, what the client can do with the client access portal in terms of remote access mirrors what they're able to do with our out-of-the-box POS Connect product that people have been using on the Vigilix.net portal. It includes things around file transfer. It obviously includes remote connectivity, includes chat, includes the ability to look at the kind of inventory, what's on the system, stop and start services without having to jump into the command prompt, or without having to take control of the console if you need to. So it includes those kinds of capabilities. And it also includes everything else that we've added that enhances that around PCI compliance. The ability to have the remote site off until you need it on, and either have an end user turn it on for you. But in the end user case, there's probably not an end user there to turn it on. So it has the ability to automate and have the Vigilix agent turn it on. Supports the two-factor authentication. And all of this information will ultimately get logged to the same location so that the data about audit trail information and logging about when a session was initiated, where it came from, and so forth, all of that information is stored and available just as if they'd used the traditional Vigilix.net portal.
Yeah, and that's my interpretation too. I think it's comparison to other systems out there that dilute the feature set based on certain levels of the product. And as you said, with Vigilix, it does include things like remote printing, file transfer, and things like that. Next question is related to the monitoring and alerting, and can your alerts tie into different trouble ticketing systems?
Yes. In fact, we've worked with several different companies, and we've integrated into their ticketing systems. In some cases, we've built automated actions that use APIs, but the most traditional form so far has been to build predefined email formats that will generate emails with a specified format to a particular box that the help ticketing system is monitoring and picks up and automatically generates help desk tickets. So to date, that's been the most common method of interfacing, and we've done it with several different systems.
Got it. You must have triggered another question with the discussion on remote access. How does your two-factor authentication work, and can you support unattended access on a remote device?
So the two-factor authentication, obviously one of the factors is them logging in. So traditional username and password, but the second is the generation of a PIN that's sent via email and text messaging. And that PIN is valid for a limited period of time. It's only valid for one use. And so it needs to be, and that's a relatively short period of time. I think under 5 minutes it has to be used by. And once we have those two things, we can connect them to the remote site. Now, we can support unattended access, and this is one of those items that's has been discussed by different point-of-sale providers. For the end user, from a PCI standpoint, they're allowed unattended access to their systems. They're the end user. So some of the questions on the PCI side come in around vendor unattended access to remote systems. And some of the people that we work with take a very hard line of, we need someone there to let us in. We have some point-of-sale providers we work with who have more of a managed service relationship with their clients, and their contracts are with their customers to deliver our support with you. We need the ability to connect, whether you're standing in front of the machine or not. But we will provide you information about when we've connected. And so some of the things that we've built into our tool are automatically being able to send emails to the end user when remote access to their systems has taken place, and generate a daily or a weekly summary of that remote connectivity.
I think this one is related to the two-factor authentication, and it, I guess, continues to ask, does the client access portal work the same way?
And the client access portal supports all the same functionality. In order to even take remote access of a system, first of all, a user has to have the permissions to take access to that system. They have to even have the ability from a permissions level set up in Vigilix. And all this is done through the traditional portal. The client access portal is simply a new window into the same exact functionality. They need access to the system. They won't even see the system if they don't have access to it. That user has to have been granted permission to take remote control. On top of that, they're going to have to enter the PIN with all the same functionality. It will generate a PIN. It will time out after X number of minutes. It will only work one time, and all that information will get logged and is available in the audit trails, and will trigger the email back to the, if it's set up, can trigger an email back to the end user saying, remote access was taken of your system, and here are the details.
Got it. Well, that's it for our questions. And as Andy said, we appreciate your time and taking time out of your day to join us this afternoon for the presentation. Again, if you do have any questions, feel free to contact me on the via my email that is on the screen. As we said, this webinar is being recorded, and a link will be sent out as soon as this is posted and will be made available, as well as if you're interested in the ROI calculator that Andy went through, and as well as interested in us walking through that with you and maybe working with some of your own numbers. Please let us know about that as well. Also, we will be doing future webinars as part of our continuing seminar around best practices for POS support providers. So just keep your eyes open for future announcements of upcoming webinars, as well as if you have any suggestions for any topics that you would like for us to cover, please notify us with that as well. We are always open for suggestions. So we'll be letting everybody out a little bit early today, about 5 minutes left. And so, again, we appreciate your time and look forward to speaking to you soon. Thanks so much.